Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the best but possibly thinnest spot on the team as fall camp approaches. We're living on Tahj time today, next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, wrapping up the week, and we're doing it with football on the mind, specifically of the offensive variety. We've been talking about some of these other areas offensively and some angles or questions as to their entering 2024. But the one we want to get into here today maybe features the best player on your roster individually. He's certainly, I think, the biggest name. Tahj Brooks and the ball carriers is who is up for discussion here today. And a general question I have that I want to get into with you when we start talking about some of the depth is whether or not this could be, from a superlative standpoint, the best offering Texas Tech has as a football team, but also as a group, one of the thinnest possibly whenever we start to look to some of those guys like Cameron Valdez and a really young guy in Cameron Dickey. We'll get to the other two in just a moment, but man, we're in one of those moments where you really got to savor the flavor of watching a guy like Tahj Brooks. They don't come around all that often, and he's got some numbers that are in record books within his sights this year. So looking forward to seeing his Texas Tech career capper.
Yeah, as far as like the position group, it's actually very fascinating because there's nobody on your entire team that is more entrenched at their particular position and is good at their position or craft, you know, in the conference or the country as much as Tahj Brooks is as a running back. And yet, if you look at the totality of the group, it's a bit tricky. There's not a whole lot of proven behind him, lots of possibilities, but because we weren't even sure, let's be honest with ourselves here. We weren't even sure when we're talking about this last year. A couple things. One, we had no real feel for what we were about to get from Tahj Brooks. And then as we go along last year, the second part of that is there's just no way he's coming back. There's just no way. And yet he is. So it's fun to still be talking about him. Obviously, NIL and all those kinds of things make that possible and make it an option for somebody like Tahj Brooks. I just think about all the guys that you could have potentially kept here over the years had NIL been available to where they were fringe this and that. I mean, I think about, you know, like on the basketball, like Zaire Smith and Jemias Ramsey and Jarrett Culver and some of those guys that left eligibility on the table. It's like you could have kept them if NIL would have been an option. I don't know, but football-wise, there's probably a long list too. But it's fun to be still talking about Tahj Brooks, but nobody's more entrenched than he is. And yet I think we would both agree that in some way it will be best for all parties, and maybe especially Tahj, if we see him less than we did last year. That's just the reality of it. Twofold. One, you got to back off of him a little bit. I just think that the amount of carries and touches and all those things, and it's going to be hard to do. And maybe I'm wishing and hoping for something that when push comes to shove, we just won't see it. I don't know. But I think, too, you need to be better throwing the football. You know, you need to be better at other aspects of your offense than you were last year to not. But I'm telling you, I think that teams are going to load up and try to stop Mr. Brooks early on, and he does have the record in his sights. And Joey has said publicly, we're breaking that. Yep, it's happening. Like he's getting that. Byron Hansbard's record's coming down. You know, that whole deal. And so they still are intent on running him plenty, as they should. But I just hope that you don't see close to 300 carries like you did last year. Hence the reason we'll get into some of the depth behind him, which is largely if not mostly, if not nearly all, unproven. So that's the kind of the scary part. Tons of potential and possibilities there behind Tahj. But again, I'm just glad that we're still talking about Tahj Brooks, as he'll leave here as one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm kind of curious, you'd hope for some depth to round out and provide some relief to the load that Brooks has to carry within his position group. But it could come in another fashion as well. Like you alluded to there, you get the passing game unhitched from the wagon, then that might also provide some relief where he's being turned to in some more crucial situations or crucial downs as opposed to, I don't know, every down. But look, you're talking to a 3 yards in cloud of dust guy. That was my football education. So every down sounds fine to me. But for his sake, you want a little relief there. And yeah, the passing game just wasn't there to really complement it like you hope it would be. But how about a little of both? Some production from some of the depth behind him, and then also some of that passing game to go with it. Chris, I'm curious about his evolution as a football player, the final go-around that we'll see him in red and black, and what that's actually going to look like. I think we had a question earlier, maybe in the summer or earlier in the year, actually regarding his weight and whether or not that might be something that could contribute to a little more burst or maybe a little bit more speed. But I'm really curious maybe on some things that you think he's focusing on or has focused on just to continue to better round himself out as a ball carrier, what that might look like this year.
Yeah, and a little bit lighter, I think, and I think stronger. It's a nice combo. I saw some film of him recently squatting the weight room, basically. I mean, just he's a partner in the weight room with Caleb Rogers, and I think he can throw around a ton of iron in the weight room. And obviously they limited him most of spring. There's no need to put him in harm's way when you know what he can do, and he's just kind of out there leading and all those things. And I'll tell you, you mentioned the ball carrier part. The hardest part for Kenny Perry and Joey McGuire and Zach Kitley in taking him off the field is not necessarily not having him out there as this weapon and handing him the football. I think that's a bit of a misnomer, and it is. But hear me out. The scariest part for them when he's not out there is he's so good at protecting the quarterback and pass protection. And that's something that younger running backs, it's not just about carrying the football. It just isn't. And you can't play at this level or certainly at the next level unless you can pick up a blitz, pick up that linebacker coming around the corner, just chip somebody and then go out on a route, whatever. And
which also ties into physicality, right? Like if you think you're a finesse guy or something like that, blocking doesn't call for finesse. So that's just another thing he's got going for him.
And if you're undersized or maybe you're just out of high school and you get blown up, and we'll get into Cam Dickey in a little bit because I think he obviously brings some size and physicality and all that. But that's always but it's the collisions that Tahj would take on a lot of the blitz pickups that's where a lot of the punishment's coming from. It's not necessarily getting tackled after carrying the football. It's because, he would dish it out now. And I think, Kenny Perry would talk about that all the time. Like, you guys all follow the ball. Just watch him on some of these plays when the ball goes elsewhere. He's in a collision, and it's violent every play. And that's where can Cam Valdez, can he be close to that? Can Cameron Dickey, as a true freshman, can he be that? So you don't get Barron hurt or somebody busts something and then here comes a blitz that we missed on, or blown assignment, or we just weren't physical enough to block whoever was coming off the edge or up the middle, whatever it may be. But that's the part what makes Tahj such a good player in total, because he's so there's nothing he can't do. He can catch it and he can run it, and he certainly can pick up the blitz. Again, the one knock there is just the breakaway speed. It's just not who he is, but I do think he can be a bit faster with weighing a little bit less than he was last year. But yeah, that's he's just a total package, really.
Yeah, and shout out to one of the all-time legendary running back blitz pickups in the history of Red Raider football, the great Shannon Woods, College Station, Texas, America, once upon a time.
2006.
made a lot of things possible, didn't it? Just a guy getting in the way of that one guy coming off the edge trying to kill our guy in the backfield. Yeah, that's always one of those things that I think really lets you know about a running back in particular. Are they here to be a full-time guy? Are they going to be a guy that's relied upon in all situations? I do wonder from not that Texas Tech would choose to feature him in this way, but given sort of the trend of offenses and the players that make it in the National Football League and kind of hang around, the versatility is a part of it. And I do wonder sort of about the pass catching aspect. If you're talking about, again, professional aspirations. First, today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and keep that ride or die ride on the road, or elevate your car's game to the next level of performance. Superchargers, exhaust kits, LED headlights, roof racks, and accessories of all kinds to fit your style. Whether it's power, speed, or design you're into, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts to perfectly fit what you need. Just head over to ebay.com/motors now, where you'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and at no risk because of eBay's guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit just right every time, or your money back, keeping you burning rubber and not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to keep your ride or die on the road and moving your life forward at ebay.com/motors. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions do apply. I do wonder sort of about the pass catching aspect. If you're talking about, again, professional aspirations, never have confused him for one of those guys, but he's done a little of that. Hasn't got a ton of opportunity, but I feel like, Chris, he's close to one of those that you just put in the category of find a way to get the ball in his hands. He's probably going to make the first guy miss. Maybe the second guy miss. He's going to blow up the third guy, whatever it might be. And he's going to make a play. So I do wonder when we talk about the complete package or kind of being well-rounded, maybe one of those things we see evolve is showing some of that versatility out of the backfield. As if, he didn't do enough in the A and B gap, I guess. I want him to do something else. But that's one of those things that I kind of feel like is an untapped resource heading into his final year, possibly.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that may be some evolution there that we get a bit more of. But I think that I'm just curious how, I don't know if the right word is discipline, how willing they are, because they're going to say that they are, and I would agree that they need to be. How willing are you to keep him over there next to you on a series? Yeah. It's just like, it's hard, and yet you know that you need to be. You're protecting him. I always like the basketball and football comparison. I just remember, like, Keenan Evans this was always a topic whenever it came to, I think, his junior year or the sophomore junior year, and he averaged like 32 minutes a game. And I think they went in the next year going, we can't do that to him. We cannot. He's got to average like 26 minutes a game. But it's just, is it lip service, or it's like, okay, you look at the score, you look at the bench, you look at the score, you look at the bench. It's like, all right, get over it. You got to have a stomach for it. And it also is going to require, Cam Valdez and Cam Dickey to really step up and emerge and kind of make it to where, like, hey, man, coach, I got this. Like, I'm going to be fine. We're not going to be a big drop off here. Hey, man, he's going to be gone next year. You need to get us some experience. But all that factors in there. Yeah. But again, it's just the whole dynamic of that is extremely tricky when you're trying to win football games, because you're trying to put your best foot forward for right now, right then. And yet, maybe what's best for player, for team, for program, for future, or whatever. And maybe for the long-term health of somebody like Tahj Brooks, or keeping him fresher in November instead of running him like crazy in September, or throwing it to him, or just keeping him out there for 85 snaps on a Saturday afternoon. So anyway, fairly interesting kind of game within the game there.
Great opportunity to segue to the double cam portion of the conversation. Yeah. You're talking about Valdez, you're talking about Dickey, and we fall in love with the new shiny toy so easily. And there's been a lot of conversation about Cameron Dickey this offseason. I'm wondering if you think we're overlooking Valdez. I'm wondering if you think maybe there is just the real chance that Dickey could be the real deal earlier than maybe some would suspect. How do you see that dynamic? Because among sort of backup positional battles beyond, the first or second option, this is probably one of the more interesting ones on the team because the team really needs it. And the newcomer has gotten a lot of pub, I guess I would say, this offseason.
Yeah, I think Cam Dickey has been really good for Cam Valdez, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is I think he's really pushed him. I think, because there was a chance that the Cam Valdez was going to leave here and maybe seek employment elsewhere. But I think that, it's going to see it through, at least through this season. The thing about Cam Dickey, though, back to the pass pro, that's why he's a bit different as a true freshman, because you're talking 5'10", 220 pounds, very smart, very intelligent, versatile player beyond his years, and an early enrollee. So he really put his best foot forward, and I think really did nothing to tarnish the shine on the toy part of it in the spring when he was here. And I think Joey and Kenny and Zach and everybody got to see him in action. But I think it's his willingness and his execution of being able to pick up the blitz that is going to give him some chances early. Cam Valdez has always been a player that is, I don't know if the right word is tease. He's not blazing fast. I think he's a different style of runner. That was the talk before last season. He's such a different style than Tahj. It's a good changeup. Tahj is going to, in between the tackles, he's going to run through you and all those things. And Cam Valdez is kind of a one-cut and go guy. It's a very different style. Valdez is also not somebody that just lacks he lacks top-end speed, I should say. And he doesn't possess that. But his style is a bit different for a defense, and that's why it was always tricky when you had Sir Roderick and Tahj, because they were really same as. This is kind of just different guys, but really you're getting the same general style and physicality and all those things. But Cam Valdez is very different, and I'm hoping that he can stay healthy enough to really, be consistent with giving you something, because I think you'll like the player and like what you get if you can see it over a consistent basis, because there's just been too often that he's out for 3 weeks here and there, and he's out, and you never get in any kind of rhythm, and you can't put your best foot forward. And then the coach is like, I don't know whether I can count on him, and that's why, somebody like Cam Dickey's emergence has been fairly important in case that Cam Valdez is dinged up. But I think you are certainly feel comfortable with 3 deep. The one name that I'm certainly intrigued by, and he's a bit of an unknown, because I think he got here in the summer, Jacoby Williams. He's very dynamic. He's more of your scat back, maybe freak athlete. Remember a lot of the highlights of him dunking a basketball and all the different things. He's got a lot of twitch. He's just going to be very undersized. So he's not somebody that I think you would see, but very sparingly, depending on what August looks like, because I don't know if you want him trying to pick up a blitz and some of the things that you need from a running back on an every down basis. But pretty fascinating position here, man. It really is. And I don't know if we can realistically expect another 1,500 yards. And I certainly hope we don't get, and I mean this in a good way, I hope we don't get another 292 carries from Tahj Brooks. We need to get some other guys involved and things like that. But they have to produce.
How about 292 carries over
16 games?
15 games, 16 games. Yeah, whatever the number has to be now, and we'll see you in the national championship.
Touche. I will.
There's a qualifier.
Yes, I will take it. Yeah, caveat right there for sure.
Hey, by the way, talking about another qualifier or caveat, if this is technically a ball carrier conversation, I think we may have to include another guy that we've mentioned this offseason, and I'm still hearing that sound blowing in the wind with visions of Nehemiah Glover in my head. Jet sweep. And I'm wondering, and of course I was carrying shooters in my boots back at that time, so maybe I'm thinking of the wrong guy, but I think Glover got involved with that play. But I'm wondering about Micah Hudson and some other create some touches kind of guys, but specifically Micah Hudson. He's number one on the list. he's going to get a carry, right? In some form or fashion, jet sweep or otherwise, like something's going to be called up where he's going to be involved in that kind of thing.
I think you will, every time I use the word manufacture, you always start to you always perk up and like you start thinking jet sweep. There's some guys on your team that I think need to be involved that you will quote unquote manufacture touches to. I think Dre McCray still is in that mold a bit, just because I think he's pretty dynamic, as we've seen with the ball in his hands and things like that. I think that Micah Hudson, without a doubt, checks those boxes. I would say Micah Hudson trumps a lot of the other, maybe even Jacoby Williams and some of even the younger pieces and things like that. They will want, because I think the tricky thing about Micah is that you want to give him enough opportunities to where he's allowed to live up to some of this expectation and hype. And if you don't, does that when like somebody comes in as like, hey man, they promised you this, I could just see that's where the tricky dynamic comes into play on having such a high profile recruit. The last thing you'd want to do is like, yeah, let's bring him along slowly, especially with all the talk that we've heard. So I do think that, yeah, Micah Hudson will get it handed to him. I mean, I'll tell you this too. You're going to see, I'll be shocked if you don't see Jalen Conyers lining up in the backfield too, as like the QB Wildcat situation. I just think you have a lot of versatility there with some of your skill players, Cam Brown included.
I didn't want to leave out Cam Brown, yeah.
That you did not have last year. And I think it makes it a lot of fun, and it keeps the defense on their toes, whether it's 2-point conversions or red zone or short yardage or whatever. I think there's a lot of options there. But, yeah, manufacturing touches, Micah Hudson surely checks that box without a doubt.
Okay, as we got into a depth behind Tahj conversation, that led to a backup quarterback, tight end, wide receiver conversation as well. So that may be sort of indicative of the situation. But, man, with some of that talent and potential, you could do a lot of creative things with those guys, and we hope that they do. It should be a bright spot for the Red Raiders in 2024. Can't wait for one more go-round for Tahj Brooks. Chris, appreciate your time. As always, my man, enjoyed it. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we will reconvene on the other side, one weekend closer to college football returning.
Guns up, people. Gun is up. Yeah, keep hope alive, everybody. Fun talking running back, especially people like Tahj. Yeah. Anytime we get to mention, the DeAndre Washingtons and Shannon Woods and Byron Hanspards in the show along with your current running back, that's good stuff.
Heck yeah. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks again to those everydayers making us their first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12. And, of course, the best way you can help us grow the show is to comment anything below. So dive in. The water is warm. Thanks for being out there. For Chris, I'm Casey. We hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.